We're going to keep this one short and sweet because it's a little bit complicated. So Aeneas has just seen several boats and several of his companions bloop into the ocean and bubble back up swimming around. And now we are going to introduce a new character. Interea magnum isceri murmure pontem emissam quiem sensit Neptunus. Okay, so Neptunus is the new character there. Neptune. Okay, you have to see that he is the subject and that here is the verb, all the way down here in this second line to make sense of what's going on here. Meanwhile, Neptune sensed. Miscere is an infinitive, a passive infinitive. Why do we have an infinitive there? Because sensit is a verb of the head, and it's triggering indirect statement. So Neptune sensed that. Meanwhile, Neptune sensed that. There's my infinitive, and I needed a subject for that infinitive, which is going to be accusative. There it is. Okay, so something like, meanwhile, Neptune sensed that the sea was being mixed, being stirred up with a great murmur, or whatever noise word seems appropriate to you for a sea being mixed up. Emissam quiem. Emissamque is also an infinitive, so imagine that it's that. Emissam esse. Another passive infinitive, perfect. Accusative subject, hiemem. Okay, so this que is really joining this infinitive and this infinitive without esse, with a new subject accusative. All right, so Neptune sensed that blah, 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 and that a storm had been sent out. Sensit is perfect, so a perfect infinitive in indirect statement gives us time before. Time before the perfect sounds like pluperfect. So Neptune sensed that the sea was being mixed, present infinitive, so time the same, and that a storm had been sent out. Et immis stagna refusa vadis. This too. Another infinitive. Refusa esse. So we've got a 3-part indirect statement here. And that. And Neptune sensed that subject accusative stagna. And immis, adjective, ablative, going with wadis, and that the shallows had been refusa, had been poured up from the deepest shallows, I want to say again. So you got to figure out another word for this that's not shallows. That the shallow from the shoals or something like that? I don't know, you figure it out. Graviter comotus. Comotus agrees with Neptune. Graviter, third declension, adverb. Neptune did all of this, sensed all of this stuff, gravely moved, disturbed, something like that. Okay, so put it all together and how does it go? Meanwhile, and you kind of just got to go here. I like to take things as much as possible in the order in which they come. We could try that. Meanwhile, that the sea was being stirred up with a great murmur, and that a storm had been sent out. Neptune sensed all that stuff, and sensed that the shallows, the deep waters, right, had been poured back from the deepest shoals. Gravely disturbed he was when he sensed all that. Et alto, prospicien summa placidum caput extulit unda. And from the deep, looking forth from the deep, he raised up his placid head, his calm head, from the deepest part of the sea, from the deepest water. So this is like ablative, right? Oopsies. And if you don't have the macron, you can still tell because it has to be long to scan. Disiectai neai toto videt aequere classem fluctibus opressos Troias caelique ruina. Okay, so disiect Aeneid toto videt aequere classem. Videt is the verb there. Same subject, Neptune. So he picks his head up from the water, sees, disiectam agrees with classem, and it is in fact disiectam esse again. So this is another indirect statement there. Maybe get rid of that comma. I don't think that comma needs to be there. He sees. What does he see when he picks his calm head up from the deepest part of the water, or the highest part of the water? He sees that, indirect statement, that, here's our subject accusative, the fleet of Aeneas has been dispersed, has been scattered over the whole sea. Fluctibus opressos Troias caelique ruina. He sees also that, you guessed it, this is also an infinitive here. He sees that, accusative subject, the Trojans have been oppressed by the waves. He sees that the Trojans have been crushed by the waves, and by the ruina, that's ablative, and by the downfall of the sky. So that's like ablative of means, also ablative of means, or ablative of cause, maybe you could make an argument for. Nec latuera. Now look here. Latuera. So that's the equivalent of latuerunt, even though it's not that. It's latuera. So that's third plural perfect. Okay, so new subject now. It's not an infinitive anymore. Okay, let's take this from the beginning. He sticks up his head. He sees that the fleet of Aeneas has been scattered on the whole sea. That, no conjunction there, so that's an example of asyndeton. That the Trojans have been crushed by the waves and by the downfall of the sky. That's like rain. Nec latuere doli fratrem unonus et irae. Nor. So we need a plural subject there. Where is it? Ba-boom. Deceits doli. And not only that, but irae, another subject, nominative there. Nor do the deceits, the tricks of Juno and her angers, nor do the tricks and angers of Juno escape the notice of her brother. Who's her brother? Neptune is her brother. He's referred to here as her brother just to sort of remind you that they're familiar with one another, so he recognizes her tricks. He sees this storm and immediately thinks to himself, aha, Juno is up to something here. Aurad se zephyrumque vocat, dink talia fatur. Yeah, if you want to scan that, you have to get rid of the H and then make these two combine into synesis, I think it is, or whatever. But yeah, or I guess maybe it's just an elision. Dink is how you have to translate. You have to read that if you're going to scan it. Okay. Eurum ad se zephyrum quevocat dink talia fatur. He calls Eurus and Zephyr to himself. Zephyr is the west wind, Eurum the east wind. I am blanking. I think it's the east wind. He calls them to himself and then speaks forth the following things. So he's about to give a speech which